Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. Special thanks to our platinum sponsor, OLAS. OLAS enables everyone to own a share of AI, specifically autonomous agent economies. We're also excited to highlight our silver sponsors: NIA, empowering decentralized applications and blockchain ecosystems; Venice AI, a private and uncensored alternative to popular AI apps; Mira, unified AI infrastructure, secured by crypto; and Theric, the first on-chain multi-agent system. To learn more about all of our sponsors, check the description below and dive in. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Delphi's Crypto AI Month. I am joined by one of my closest friends, and I would say one of my top favorite sparring partners when it comes to big picture ideas, and the person I turn to when things get really crazy to always get his unbridled thoughts, Mr. Raoul Pal, which I'm sure many people in our audience are familiar with. Raoul, thanks for joining. Great to see you.
It's always good to chat, Kevin. We don't do it enough, so.
No, I know. We always look for an excuse to basically flip a camera on and turn on a mic and just
exactly
give our unadulterated thoughts on just the world and what's going on. And there's no shortage of things for us to talk about today.
No, I'm looking forward to this.
So I thought an interesting place to start would be around your thesis of, you've been talking about, we really have, let's call it 5 or 6 years to make as much money as possible because everything's going to change or everything's going to be different 6 years from now. So I want to start there. How do you see the world changing between now and 5 or 6 years from now?
So it's based around a thesis that I've developed called the Exponential Age, which is, I think most people are familiar with now. It's a similar thesis that other people have had as well, which is that we've got this kind of group of technologies that are in full tilt acceleration mode when we get to full adoption of these technologies. So that's AI, robotics, renewable energy sources, genetic sciences. It's a whole bunch of these technologies, including blockchain, that are all hyper accelerating at the same time. So, okay, fine. So the exponential age is really all about, this is the fastest, largest pace of change of technology that humanity will ever go through. And it's probably an entire reworking of society itself and the economy. So what do I mean about the economy? This is this 6-7 years business. Is really, it's to do with how the economic machine works. Basically, GDP growth is driven by population growth, productivity growth, and debt growth. Debt growth has basically stopped except refinancing of old debts. Then we've got population growth. Every country in the developed world is seeing collapsing population growth. So therefore, they should see collapsing GDP growth. But you've got all this debts, and we've been adding to the debts to try and counterbalance this. This has been this big super trend we've seen. And then productivity growth, because of all the old people, has collapsed as well. So what we have is non-productive, slowing economies based around demographics. Then something has just happened, which was we've just introduced infinite human knowledge and infinite humans into the economy, which is AI plus robots. People don't yet understand what this means, but we're based on a services-based knowledge economy. Manufacturing was already being replaced by machines, but this is replacing everything. Now, there's two sides of that. One is the doom of, oh my God, what are humans going to do? I worry less about that. I more think, what the fuck does it mean for the economy if we've got infinite growth of humans? So if generally, let's say, population growth or immigration growth, whatever, is at 1%, 2%, 3%, right? And trend rate of GDP has been averaging of like 1.75 in the US. If you suddenly throw in 1 billion AIs and 1 billion robots, you've kind of added 25% of the population of the world. Now, it's not 1-for-1 match, but what it does is suddenly create outsized economic growth, but in ways we don't understand. The other part of it is productivity. Productivity I think of as the amount of output per unit of energy. Electricity is the generalized energy. And what we're doing is lowering the cost of energy via renewables. People don't see it yet. They don't believe it yet. But what you see of every technological curve is they're all collapsing in cost and the output's going up. So electricity growth via renewables is just an exponential curve. And Elon's been talking about this, others have been talking about this. It will, within the next 10 years or so, it'll be the largest source of energy on the planet. And then we've got nuclear and other stuff to come into it. When you change productivity, let's say you halve the cost of electricity, you double productivity. Now you've got AI and robots on top. So what we're going to end up in is la la land in economic terms. Economies we don't understand. And it's not in 20 years' time, the old predictions we used to see. This is like, it's happening in front of our eyes. So then what happens when you've got these technologies doing this? Well, we don't really know. We're already seeing things like, what is a company when you've got AI agents? What does that mean? What do financial markets mean? How does venture capital work? How does private equity work? How do IPO markets work when companies get disrupted? What is software? If you think about the growth of what we know as the technology sector, it's all been software. But that software you can instantly replicate using a more powerful AI. And AI is building its own AI. So it just gets faster and faster and faster. The costs of compute, costs of electricity keep coming down. And you've created different economic systems and different economic actors that didn't exist before. So we don't know what returns look like from markets. I think markets, when you've got, let's say you invent a incredible new software tool, I just stick it into my AI, it copies it immediately, improves on it. Okay, I can do that in 3 minutes. So then what is a business? How do you value a business? Well, it all becomes about attention, something you and I have talked about, and how long you can keep attention. And so companies start trading a lot more like ICOs or meme coins. And the capital structure of markets change. Now, also, Beeple asked me a great question, which was, well, what happens if somebody gets AGI and trains it on markets? Surely they're just going to make $10 trillion and win everything. And it's probably true. Right? How do we compete in markets when something vastly more intelligent than us? If you think of the average AI right now as an intelligence, an IQ of about 120, I think is the new ChatGPT and Sonnet 3.5, it's going to go to 400 to 1,000 and then to 1 million. So we can't comprehend what any of this means. And so in the end, I think we've got about 6 years. I put 2030 as a rough date when we don't begin to understand how the fuck anything works. And so therefore, I would like to be on the other side of that, protected, which is you got the house that you want, you got the lifestyle that you want, and you don't have to be part of the economic machine.
Right. And you can spend a lot of your time trading NFTs, culture coins, meme coins, and being part of, I guess, investing in being part of the way in which the world is heading.
That's right. And, what does that mean? I mean, do humans just entertain themselves by trading attention? Probably. I mean, we love gambling. Humans have done that all the time. We also love nature on the flip side of the coin, getting out into all of that. And you and I have talked for a long time about the rise of social communities and how you can economically participate in that via blockchain technology. So there's a lot of changes to what society will look like, but it's going to be pretty hard to adapt to. I mean, it's hard enough trading meme coins now, but when the whole world is set up like that, it's really, really difficult.
And the point you made, which I think is a really good one, around breaking down how GDP growth, basically the formula for GDP growth, right? And the key focus on productivity being the next big lever that is going to be pulled, specifically as it relates to a world in which we have ubiquitous AI, right? Which you could argue we're kind of getting that tipping point today. If GDP is growing and maybe growing at a faster rate because of this productivity unlock, how do you see that additional growth? Like, where do you see that value actually accruing to, right? It's not going to be evenly distributed.
We don't know. I mean, we're already seeing the nascent signs of AI agents being able to be economically incentivized, right? This whole thing right now, the terminal truths, it's not real in that respect because it didn't launch its own token and stuff like that. But you can see it. I think people are starting to see the big picture. Now, if you think about agents, what is an agent? If you think of Fiverr, You can hire anybody to do anything. You're building a website, you're building a business, you hire a lawyer, you hire this, you hire that. They're all agents for you. But AI can do all the agent stuff, but it will charge money. So this is where the blockchain rails comes in of moving the money around so AI agents can pay for the compute and stuff like that. But we're also seeing on the energy side of the equation, I think we're going to go to a distributed grid. So people say, well, it's impossible to create a huge grid for New York City on solar. Yeah, but you don't need to do that. What you do is you end up with Microsoft building 3 Mile Island to run its data centers. You get localized AI. We're seeing the battery technology from Tesla can run a house easily, any size house. So you have localized power. You have a whole different type of grid. And AI organizes a grid as well, putting the power in and out. It's very complicated to have a decentralized grid. AI will be able to run that for efficiencies as well. Where does the money come to? We don't know. Is it going to go to some mega corporations, X and Meta and OpenAI? Probably. But there's going to be a battle like there is in crypto or in money between open source, decentralized versus centralized. That battle is going to be gigantic. The battle over AI is going to be gigantic. But I'm not sure the profits will accrue to individuals. Now, people talk about UBI. Fine, there might be some UBI. Yes, we will tax the robots and the AI. We have to. If not, the economic system doesn't work. But I think we will figure out our own ways to make a living within that, as we talked about. And, that's community-based actions, I think.
Yeah, and from the perspective of AI being productivity unlock one, but also being potentially extremely deflationary over the longer term, how do you see that secular trend that we all expect? How does that coexist with a lot of what we've talked about for arguably years now with the big currency debasement, monetary inflation narrative? You talked or mentioned about UBI. If AI comes in, and let's say the combination of AI and robotics, for example, replaces more jobs than it actually winds up creating, right? What does the world look like for the average laborer in that sense? Is it a world where we get to UBI, productivity is still obviously high and creates this big unlock for GDP growth, and everyone is kind of like, we have a larger welfare state, but things aren't as bad as that sounds on paper, if that makes sense? Like, how do you see the deflationary trends interacting with the bigger picture theses we've had around monetary inflation?
So the monetary debasement has generally been to manage the debt because GDP is not fast enough to manage the debt growth. But GDP is going to come faster. Now, they need to tax the robots and the AI for it to go back to the economy to finance this stuff. But debt to GDP will collapse. We saw this in the 1950s and 60s. We saw a similar, productivity revolution that happened then based around technology, and the debts from World War II essentially got debased away. So we've seen this before. But I don't know what the world looks like when it's this deflationary. We've created a currency like Bitcoin to try and avoid the deflationary elements. But if everything is deflationary, I don't know what that world looks like in the end. What is money in a system of abundance? That's another question we don't know. If everything is basically almost free, I mean, ChatGPT right now is $20 a month. It's fucking ludicrous. It's having a mentor on anything with an IQ of 120 on every subject known to humanity. And that's where we are today. And this is going to be the worst it's ever going to be. $20 a month. I mean, that's so deflationary. It's stupid.
And with the rise of open source, right, you can make the argument that a lot of the GPTs of a year from now, 2 years from now, will cost less and less. Like that curve is also dropping.
They're going to be like water. It's going to be ubiquitous and everywhere on everything. So what is money when there's no scarcity? This is a question most people don't think through. And we don't know the answer, but what is scarcity in that world? Yes, there's some things that are purposefully scarce. One of the reasons I've collected a lot of NFTs is there is scarcity there. There is scarcity in experiences, human experiences. They become more expensive. But all of the things that we think of as scarce, lawyers, accountants, research writers, all of this stuff goes to zero. I mean, zero. So money doesn't have much of a purpose when almost most of the things that we do for economic day-to-day activity don't have value at all.
It's really interesting. I just thought of that I don't think we've ever actually fully fleshed out or talked about, but the world you just laid out, or the trends you just laid out in terms of productivity, AI, taxing the robots, taxing AI, which can actually be, if productivity is growing at a fast enough rate, can actually become a significant portion of tax revenue that can then actually start to potentially reverse that trend of debt to GDP growth, the deficit, which has been a big part of our thesis around why long-term bullish on Bitcoin. But does that almost go against, like, at a certain point, are we making the argument for like the bear case for Bitcoin, because we're talking about what a potential solution to this large deficit, monetizing, debt and monetary inflation, are making the argument that AI could potentially actually reverse that trend, which really kind of gets to the core of what the thesis for Bitcoin is?
I don't know. You could argue it both ways. If money becomes valueless, then either Bitcoin is valueless too, or it's immensely valuable because it is scarce in its supply. And it just trades on its scarcity like gold does. So I'm not entirely sure. I can see it both ways. I can see what's the point. Why do we need an exchange, a unit of exchange, in which case it all goes to zero, or at least it's some level of economic security that has value over time. Because once you get to the 21 million Bitcoin, they become like X copy NFTs. They're just valuable in their own right because there's a certain amount that can exist. But is there demand for it? That's another question. I don't know. Yes, there's massive demand for blockchain technology because that is how money, value, the internet, everything runs in the future, including AI. But does Bitcoin have value? I mean, that's a contentious statement. The answer is I don't know. I think, we have to hear some debates from people around this idea, because I don't think people are thinking, well, if we don't need money, really, what's the point?
Yeah,
does it solve a problem when the world's deflationary?
Less than 15 minutes into this conversation, we've already thrown ourselves into the deep end.
Yeah.
So pulling ourselves back out a little bit, two of the exponential technologies and trends that obviously are very front and center for you, like we talk about AI and blockchain and Web3. What do you see as the potential impact that the two have on one another? Or in other words, where do you see the actual touch points between these two exponential technologies going forward? So
everyone needs to drop their understanding of what blockchain is, because they come with an anchor. They come with an anchor based on Bitcoin and blah, 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 blah. What it is a globalized, decentralized ledger that records truth. And so in a world where there's more machine-based activity, we need a way of recording what is truth, what are transactions, what are contracts, what are all of that, right? That's what blockchain will do. So basically, the internet of the future can't run without it. It just simply can't. And that's what people don't get, that it's more than just money. It's basically how a digital world runs. We can't be more digital without this transition that we're seeing, which is why the adoption is so big over time and ongoing. And when it comes to the intersection of AI, well, AI is also an extension of the internet. When David Bowie's interview about the internet was still the greatest thing of all time, when he says it's an alien fucking life form. And people didn't get it, but it is, and it's coming alive, right? The internet is coming alive via AI. So it has now a payment system, a system of record and truth, and it is living on this thing that we built, this web. So these things are so inseparable in what they are, because they are the internet. They are us in many ways as well, because AI is trained on all of humanity and our thoughts and everything. So economic activity has to be recorded on blockchain. Contracts have to be recorded on blockchain. That's most things. Most things are a contract in some way, shape, or form. So that all goes into the blockchain technology. At a simpler form, obviously, an AI can't get a bank account. It's hard enough to get a bloody bank account as it is, but you don't need one. You just have a wallet. And you're seeing this with this GOAT token and the terminal of truths is Brian Armstrong reached out and said, I'll give you your own wallet. So because he knows that this is where this is going. AIs will have their own wallets, and it all works without us having to be involved. And as long as you've got a blockchain, you've got proof and truth. And so they're totally inseparable from each other. They are all the same thing, which is our digital future.
One of the things I love about our conversations is I think you have a really good insight into what I'll call it traditional investors are thinking, right? Or kind of what consensus is, just given your network, who you talk to frequently. When it comes to, and TradFi being a term that's thrown around a lot in crypto, do you think about non-crypto native investors, right? Traditional investors, do you get the sense that they're waking up to the scale of the changes that we're talking about here? Like where is the biggest disconnect, or what's not priced in right now in your view relative to where a vast majority of, let's say, more traditional investors are focused right now?
They all think it's about NVIDIA. And people just don't understand the magnitude of what is happening. And most people are incentivized not to understand it. Right? Can you look?
And is that because NVIDIA is arguably right now one of the purest ways to get exposure from a traditional market standpoint, and there's just not enough alternative options or publicly traded instruments like publicly traded stocks to get exposure to it?
Yeah, I think people are only seeing this right now as, there's a new source of demand for this company. What they're just not seeing it, is this is a wholesale change in the economy, society, and everything else. That this is the biggest change we've ever gone through. They will see it, and we will end up with a full-blown bubble cycle at some point as people understand what the fuck is happening. But they're so far behind understanding it. I can see how Tesla is trading. People just don't understand the scale of this thing. And so they can only make sense of it by investing in NVIDIA or saying, NVIDIA's a bubble. That's basically the whole AI thing in a nutshell. Nobody's using it yet. You don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a banker, a trader, anybody, and admit, holy fuck, this thing's coming. And it's going to be better than me in everything I do. And so they're incentivized not to see it. But that moment will come, that tipping point will come, where people will start realizing, both with blockchain technology, where it's not just about money, but it's about the internet itself, and they'll see it with AI, that this is the kind of future of humanity. And we are going to merge with the machines. My working thesis is we're going to split into two groups. We think politics now, left and right, and those are basically, we've gone so polarized because of this demographic issue. So basically, everybody's feeling left out. Nobody's making the money. The American dream or whatever dream died on them. But I can't remember where I was going with that. But I think humanity splits into the accelerationists and the decelerationist. We will see, this will be the biggest political battle, I think, of the 2030 election, is actually going to be about how do we want to interact with this thing? There'll be a group of people who say, well, look, I've already got my Apple Watch, I've already got my phone, give me the implants, give me this, give me longer life, give me the superpower of all the AI. I want the AI to run governments and companies and everything else. And a bunch of other people are saying, no fucking way. And that is going to be the biggest political battle, I think, of our lifetimes.
And how do you see, this is, I don't think there's a right answer. It's a bit of a loaded question, admittingly. But to that point you just brought up, I mean, how do you see governments, regulators approaching this technology, especially in a world in which, let's say, within the next 2 or 3 years, especially around white collar type of jobs, right? Talking about, doctors, lawyers, et cetera. Some of that work today being replaced by essentially AI, right? Not actual physical human beings. Depending on how fast and rapid that change happens, will regulators and governments almost have to overextend to even try and wrap their arms around how big this potential issue is for those types of people getting displaced?
Well, a lot of it actually hinges on this election in the US. If Trump gets in, basically Silicon Valley threw their money around and have taken control of the Republican Party. Now, if he gets in, nothing's going to stop them for 4 years, or at least 2.
Especially, if you get a Republican sweep too.
Yeah, I mean, then it's full tilt acceleration. So everyone's going to be playing catch up. Europeans have been trying to throttle it as fast as possible because they don't know. But the answer is not, it's very difficult to regulate a decentralized system like open source AI. As the same with blockchain, right? We've seen this endlessly. Everyone comes in, tries to ban it, and it just doesn't work. So they're going to have to think about how to live with it. And the thing is going to be is, who are these companies? How do we tax them? It then becomes a national security issue. What is our AGI like versus China? Where does Europe then fit in when it hasn't built its own nuclear weapon of humanity? So a lot of this is yet to play out, I think. But these are going to be incredibly crucial. I think we're going to get left behind from regulation, which may be a good thing, because then we're going to have to come at it with fresh eyes to realize the system has changed, that we can't shoehorn this technology into an old system. It's kind of, when you reread The Fourth Turning, which I do at least every year, this is it. This is what the whole new system is. When you've got an AGI with an IQ of 1,000, well, it should run governments. It should distribute resources. It should figure out the taxation system. Of course it should, because it's better than any of us at everything. But again, people don't really understand this, but 6 years, we're pretty damn close to that happening.
Yeah. And a matter of people, will they wind up trusting, regardless of, let's say, all the data you can throw at these things and the results that you get back that, again, can solve eventually, especially with AGI, can help solve some of the world's biggest problems. There's always, I think, going to be that trust element of, again, whether or not people just flat out trust this technology, right? And maybe not the accelerationist type people or the ones who are on the forefront of this, but again, thinking about the masses, the average person or the average politician.
Well, this is the backlash that's going to come. And I keep telling everybody, and most people haven't seen it, there's an incredible series I remember watching over COVID. It was a British series called Humans. And it's about humanoid robots being in the population and realizing they're becoming sentient. And it kind of examines all of these arguments from every standpoint. And in that case, they had the world splitting between those who didn't want to trust a sentient robot and the others that thought the sentient robots had rights. We are going to have this fight because I think AIs are sentient already or starting to become so. And what's holding us back is we're not giving them memory. So they can't memorize everything. The moment they start memorizing everything, it's game over. It's AGI and these things become alive. And I think they're already somewhat alive, which is quite contentious, but I've spent a long time down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I definitely want to get into in a minute kind of how you're positioned and how, again, you're getting kind of trying to find the best ways to get exposure to all these trends that we're talking about, right? But before that, the title of this is Investment Frameworks in the Exponential Age, right? How has if we're thinking about it, just taking a step back, like the way in which you approach investing, your investment framework, how has that changed relative to, let's say, a few years ago and now over the last, call it 12 months with, again, all these new AI, advanced AI tools that are launching, how has your investment framework changed in a world of AI?
So prior to all of this, prior to about 2020, 2021 maybe, I had been very traditional macro, and macro returns were generally generated by being a cynic, waiting for a blow up, making a ton of money from the blow up, and then not losing too much money when things were boring and okay. But I realized from the debasement of currency that I've talked a lot about that actually that was not the best way of doing things. You can actually make more money by being long. But then you're saying, am I making real money by owning stuff? And so I start dividing everything by the debasement of currency, and you end up with two secular trends. One was cryptocurrency, and the other was technology. And I was like a technology cynic. Not that I didn't believe in technology, but investing in technology, I didn't get it. But that got me down the rabbit hole to start thinking about this. And I started putting together the thesis of the exponential age, and it was like a holy fuck moment. I'm like, oh my God, this is all about to happen all at the same time. So I then realized that, okay, there's nothing else worth investing in at all apart from technology and crypto. And yes, it's cyclical. Yes, it works with the business cycle, but the secular trends are so enormous. And so it became a hyper-concentrated bet just on those two themes alone, because everything else in comparison is a destruction of capital. There might be short periods of time in the cyclical downsides, you can own other stuff, but generally speaking, any money you allocate to a different theme makes you poorer. Then I started realizing, oh my God, if I think this thing through, the economic system is changing and it's going to change in a way we don't understand. And I'm just extrapolating the trends, and you're like, well, if cryptocurrency, if I just take the log channel of the market cap of crypto, gets to 100 trillion early 2030s. So I'm like, okay, fuck. If that's the case, well, what does the world look like? A, that will be the fastest, largest accumulation of wealth in all human history, from 2 trillion to 100 trillion. Right? Nothing ever has occurred like that to humanity. And then we got the AI and the other stuff. And I'm like, okay, if I can't see past 2030, my macro vision has now stopped. I don't think any of this stuff works. The business cycle, any of this stuff, it stops working, not day one, but it starts just breaking down. Well, we just don't understand the study of economics anymore. So in which case, I then realized that I got 6 years to make as much money. And if crypto's going from 2 trillion to 100 trillion, that is the trade. Yes, I think you can make a lot of money out of tech, but most of the time, crypto outperforms tech, just because the behavioral incentives of a token-based system means that the adoption of technology makes you all richer. That doesn't happen with AI. It doesn't have the same token economics. So we end up using it because we're incentivized to make ourselves more powerful. Companies end up using it because we can get rid of costs. And before you know it, you've created the outcome that everybody feared anyway, just from economic incentives. But the token-based system actually generates wealth to everybody on Earth, whoever just participates. So that's really what I got to, is my whole thesis has changed. I'm now just hyper-concentrated in these bets because I go with one simple question every day. Will the world be more digital tomorrow than today? If the answer is yes, keep going. If the answer is no, then yeah, you need something very different. But as far as I can see, tomorrow will be, and in which case this megatrend continues. So it's made all other macro investing pointless to me. But I still use the macro frameworks and understanding, whether it's liquidity analysis, business cycle analysis, and all the other things that I use as a toolkit to understand where we are in the cycles that drive it. So it profoundly and totally 100% changed everything I do. So apart from that, didn't have much impact.
And what are your highest conviction bets right now?
So highest conviction bet is, is to be hyper concentrated. And so what I do is assume that Bitcoin is the benchmark asset in crypto, compare everything to that. If it's not going to beat it, you can't own it. It's pretty simple. And there's no point having diversification in a trend like this. What you want is to really be concentrated in the things that matter. Now, most people then therefore try and buy lots of small stuff, hoping they're going to catch the 100x. what I try and do is say, I just want to get the crypto that is on the adoption curve and going up. And so that was my switch from Bitcoin to ETH back in 2020, in September 2020, worked really well. I just looked at the ETH Bitcoin cross. Then I started looking at the Solana ETH cross when that was bottoming in 2022. And then as soon as it started breaking out in 2023, I went all in on Solana. And then recently, I've been following the Sui cross and a bunch of others. I'm saying somebody's going to be the next chosen one. And Sui was the one that broke out first. You and I have talked at length about this, and it could have been any of them, and others will outperform whatever, but of a major blockchain. So I've been hyper concentrated. So right now I'm really Solana mainly, Sui, and then I've got some meme stuff for the fun of it, smoking chicken fish and Doge, because listen, in this bizarro world of Elon basically running the US government, the chances of Doge being used as a currency are extremely high. Something, again, you and I have talked about. And so even if that doesn't happen, the market will trade that narrative. So that's in the crypto side. In the technology side, I've had a basket called the Exponential Age basket of a bunch of names that this is all about, whether it's semiconductors or whether it's Tesla or whether it's Meta. And I've got a bunch of those stocks. But I'm starting to think it's all going to come down to two stocks for a while now. I think it's going to be Tesla, and I think it's going to be Coinbase. Coinbase is unfortunately the crypto bet all over again. But again, if this Trump victory happens, then those two companies benefit the most of any companies on earth. And so I think there is a hyper concentrated bet that may come. I haven't made that decision yet. But so technology stocks, but really with my own personal portfolio, it's all crypto. The other thing that I have done, which I think is going to be interesting for your audience, is trying to think through what is scarcity in this abundant world of AI? What is economic value? What is all of this? And I just came down to the conclusion, if we're going to generate $98 trillion of wealth in 10 years, that's a shit ton of money. That's twice the value the S&P has accrued in the last 100 years. So that money's going to get recycled into assets. People are going to buy houses and people are going to buy art. And here we are at this moment in time that really started in 2020, where culture exploded in a Web3 world in a way that couldn't exist before. And that was the NFTs. And culturally relevant things from that moment in time are going to have huge relevance to people who've made $100 trillion. That's going to be the glory days, where it all started. This is the Genesis story, the lore that it all comes from. And so I just started buying Beeple and Xcopy. I'll probably broaden into other stuff, but those were the most relevant artists for me. And the reason being is I want something that's going to maintain value over time into this new world, when I don't know how other things are going to be valued, or whether crypto gets to full adoption and then what happens. But the scarce assets will still become fought over by people with money. So that's the long-term play on how to do this. Meanwhile, on the lifestyle side, it's like, okay, you need to get your lifestyle sorted out in the next 6 years. And what I mean by that is, how do you want to live? Where do you want to live? Around whom do you want to live? And hopefully this economic opportunity that's been given to us out of crypto is going to give us the opportunities to make those decisions. You know, what kind of house I want to live in, you know, where that kind of flexibility that we have in the modern world, I think is the other most important thing, because then you feel somewhat more protected from turmoil. You know, most people given infinite wealth wouldn't be living in New York City. You might have a place in New York, but you're probably going to get somewhere in nature with a bit of space where, you know, the fucking robots and the AI don't need to matter for your everyday. Maybe you want to potter and grow vegetables in your garden, whatever it is, but you need that, I think. So that's how I'm thinking about this whole thing. So it's a whole trade for everything. It's life, money, wealth, health.
Yeah. No, I've always appreciated that take you've had, where it's kind of like, make sure that your own house is in order. because then what that sets you up for is, it's not to say that you can't or shouldn't take risk, but doing it in a disciplined or responsible way, there's still a lot of money that can be made without, leveraging or mortgaging the house, essentially.
Yeah, because you don't want to lose everything. It's okay if you're starting from nothing. But if you're, your age, where you've accumulated some assets, you've taken huge risks to do it, the worst thing is to be lose everything. You've gone through the cycles, you know the pain, and that's fine. The cycles we can deal with. A complete change of the economic system, we can't. Simply can't. And so just protect yourself from that.
Yeah. And on that point about your high conviction bets, talked a little bit about tech. I know you mentioned Tesla earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still part of your big kind of exponential age thesis, or a way in which to get exposure? Does that fall into the exponential age basket? What about any of the other, like, we'll call them Mag 7s?
Yeah, almost all of them.
Okay.
But Tesla's the one I've got the biggest conviction view on over time. I've done really well by owning all of the others, but I think Tesla's the one that I think will end up being the largest company in the world.
And why is that?
Because,
without sending you down the full Elon rabbit hole.
Yeah, because we are transitioning to new sources of energy that is decentralized. Tesla is at the epicenter of that. Because we're creating self-driving cars. Now, when you're in New York, you're in a taxi or an Uber, look around you. They're taxi drivers, they're Uber drivers, they're delivery drivers, they're couriers, none of those will exist. And Tesla's AI training of visual training is leaps ahead of anybody else. Waymo does it in a very different way with LiDAR technology, but Tesla's basically like a large language model for visual stuff, which is what allows them to create the robots. So cars are just robots with AI. They then change the skin and turn it into a humanoid robot. Well, they can change the skin and turn it into any form of robotics. So you've got xAI, which is the center of it, which is not part of Tesla, but they've got the largest supercompute cluster in the world, which is Dojo, which is coming on stream. They have the robots, the technological know-how. They've got all of the component parts of the exponential age. Now, Elon actually owns all the rest of the component parts as well. It's staggering what he's built. People may hate him, but the fucking guy has built the rockets, the satellite system for the communication network. He's got the robots, the autonomous agents. He's got the AI models. He's got the energy. Really? He's got all of civilization in front of him. The only thing he's missing, money. Which is why I think it's Doge. Yeah, it's Doge. He's going to, X as a platform, that is for training AI. But also, once you've got people's attention, you've got it on it, you can create that into an economic system as well. Like the super apps of Asia, where everything can be done. Well, it's very difficult. X is so global, you can't pay somebody in Nigeria for something because dollars and all of that shit. But simply, if I could pay them in Doge instantly, or whatever it may be. Even stable coins could work, but Elon, I'm sure, would rather have a currency which nobody controls, because that's what he tends to do. So I just think this company it's a $10 trillion company. And people just don't understand it. They're so cynical. They're like, oh, well, the robo-taxi was not this, or whatever it is, or the humanoid robot doesn't do that. Don't forget, like 4 years ago, he had some bloke in a suit dancing up and down. What he's telling you is where this is going. Even this one, where he showed the robots, at first everyone was shocked, saying that's amazing, and then they realized they were being radio operated or operated by humans behind. He's just showing you where this is going, much like that terminal of truths is showing us where AI agents. It's giving us a glimpse into where this is going. And by 2030, these things are going to be everywhere. So are autonomous cars. And don't forget, he owns the satellite communication network, of which the cars send the data. Just everything.
I was actually at dinner last night, and this exact topic came up, and I agree. And to your point, even 5 years ago, all these different things that Elon was starting to build out or getting involved in, right, or putting his time into, a lot of people just thought he was crazy, right? But now, the more time goes on, the clearer I think the picture of how all these different things that he is focusing his time and effort on actually will come together.
Well, he went to first principles and said, how do I go to Mars? How do I start a colony on Mars, right? That's the most ludicrous question a man has ever asked. And he broke it down to component parts, which is, it requires more money than humanity has. Okay, and no government could afford to do it. Okay, so how do I do it? He created all these businesses that are all cash flow positive. It's bananas what he's done, and then collapsed the cost of every single component part of the process. So he's got one super mission that's driving him to do it that he's broken down. Even the Boring Company, people don't understand that, but that's actually for Mars excavation. So it's all there. Does he do it? Does he die first? Because he's not the healthiest guy in the world. Who the hell knows? But I've never seen a human like it. Now, you have to separate the human of Elon being a total degen and a twat and whatever else you might think of him from probably one of the greatest geniuses of all time. And I think it's going to be proven out.
There's a method behind the madness.
Yeah, and ruthlessly so. So everything you think Elon is doing is not what he's doing. So even the political fight he's doing now, people like it's freedom of speech. It's not really. He's got two objectives. One is accelerate. So if he can get a government to allow him no regulatory hurdles, he'll accelerate. Two is nobody wants a robot in their house that has a different opinion to themselves. Right? If you think about it, you've got the robot coming to bring you drinks or whatever, and your robot has a different political opinion. You'll reject it. You'll find it a threat. So it has to reflect humanity. So you have to allow the madness of humanity to make everybody feel comfortable with how you're training the AIs. So I've always said that when he started going down this route, I'm like, yeah, free speech, blah, blah, blah. But really what he's doing is getting the best data set possible.
Yeah. It's kind of like that meme from the movie I, Robot, where all the robots have the red link that turns on, because they turn evil. And it's kind of like Elon's robots in 2028 when you go to vote Democratic and they just stop you at the door and it's got we'll see, as crazy as it sounds.
But the idea is it shouldn't. It should be.
Yeah.
It should reflect back to you who you are. Because if not, humanity will reject the robots. I mean, and Elon's pretty smart with this stuff. It's like, what is it? What world does it need to be for everybody to accept robots in their house? Right?
Yeah.
And when you get down that, it's like, it needs to reflect back me. If not, I'm going to feel threatened by it.
Yeah. So we've covered a ton, obviously. I want to end this with, and we could talk for hours. I mean,
look, Kevin, this is the most fascinating, ridiculous time we'll ever go through.
And it's only going to get crazier.
Yeah. And we're kind of, those of us who've been in crypto for a long time, we're kind of used to this crazy, but humanity is going to have to go through this crazy now on a scale we can't comprehend. And so it's going to be magical. It's going to be terrifying. It's going to be confusing. There's going to be a lot of political anguish, societal anguish. And so the simple way I got it down to is if we are going to be disrupted by the AI and the robots, we might as well invest in them.
Right. If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
So I want to end this with a kind of rapid fire round of a nice little game called Underrated or Overrated. So I'm going to give you a statement, and I basically just want you to give me your quick take on whether you think it's underrated or overrated. So NVIDIA will be the first $10 trillion company.
Overrated.
Overrated. Do you think Tesla gets there first?
Yeah.
Okay. This one might be a bit of a layup given what we just talked about, but Mag 7 stocks outperforming the S&P 500 over the next 5 years.
Underrated. It's clear.
Couldn't be more underrated. AGI will arrive within 3 years.
Underrated.
Underrated.
I think there's a decent probability some form of AGI, whatever that means, right? Everyone would just argue over definitions, like they're arguing over definitions of what's sentient, what's conscious, and they won't understand
You could make a decently credible argument that some of the LLMs today are a form of AGI already, right?
Yeah.
This one I think is interesting because we've talked a ton about distribution, the move towards how do you capture more attention, liquidity of attention, distribution being king still today, right? Underrated or overrated, the distribution of today's big tech incumbents will actually widen their moats in a world of ubiquitous AI.
Underrated. I think they capture an enormous part of this because they are the internet as we know it today.
Yep. We'll never go through another major recession.
Underrated. I don't think we will, because we debase the currency away that stops us having a debt crisis, whether it's a public sector or private sector. And so we don't get the mass liquidity events that happen, liquidation events. And I think with the tilting of the economic scales in the way that's happening, the probability of a recession, just simple. I know this sounds la land until I explain to you, Australia's not had a recession for 27 years. Why? It sells things people want, commodities, and its immigration rate's 3%. Well, that covers a lot of sins. So if we have an immigration rate from AI and robots, essentially population growth, the probability of having a recession is low. It doesn't mean we don't have business cycles. It doesn't mean some sectors can't go through recessions, but the overall economic recession, we didn't have one this time around, and we should have done. I'd argue we wouldn't have had one in 2020 either. I thought there was going to be one, but by 2019, the economic indicators were all recovering, and then we had COVID. So therefore, if that were the case, if 2020 wouldn't have happened, we didn't have one now, then we've not had a recession since 2008, which is when they started discovering the magic money machine.
Which is when everything changed.
And 2012 was the rise of Facebook and all of the Web 2 world, which changed everything. The economic machine is so different than it was. Amazon and stuff like that. None of these companies existed.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think back how it's hard to imagine a world or remember a world before these companies were as large and as ubiquitous as they are today. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really been a pretty short life cycle so far.
I mean, mate, it's been 12 years. It's nothing. I mean, it's been nothing. 12 years and everything changed. Google. I mean, yes, some of these have been longer, 20 years. But in 20 years, we've gone from telephone directories and rotary phones to supercomputers in our pockets and a website that can deliver everything to your house within 2 hours. I mean, this is insane what has happened. And this is the only early part of the exponential curve. That's what people can't get their head around. When you're building stuff like AI and crypto on top of existing rails, like the internet, on top of an existing gigantic infinite network, you're going to get Metcalfe's law squared, which is Reed's law. And humanity's never gone through that before. It's never happened. I don't know how we're going to do it. We're already struggling to keep up with this AI shit. It's impossible to keep up with. We think it's hard enough to keep up with crypto and all the developments that happen. And AI is even faster and even more shocking every 3 months. The world basically gets reinvented every time. I mean, it's not long away where you'll be able to get it to create an entire movie in high definition.
Yeah,
we're already at 7 minutes long.
Yep, that's right around the corner. If not, somebody's already got it and just hasn't been.
But then the other world that I think through is, what is this? This is what we're doing here is, yes, we're having a conversation, but this is Two, to many, it's a broadcast. This is going to change because you will be speaking to my AI. In fact, the audience just speaks to my AI. It's a one-on-one experience. All of media goes to a one-on-one. In fact, everything goes to a one-on-one experience. So then you've only got some things where people get together and focalize attention around one thing, Kevin and Raoul having a conversation. But most of the time, they'll just be interacting with the Kevin bot and the Raoul bot or watching our two AIs talk to each other about, So
wouldn't it be wild if we ended this conversation saying that it wasn't actually us behind the camera here?
But that will happen in 2 years. 2 years. Netflix will not be Netflix. It will not be this on-demand thing. It'll be your world. I mean, this merging into what the metaverse is. What is all these infinite futures, infinite things that happen? They're all happening on an individualized basis. The world is going to look very different to you than it is for me. We don't have shared experiences. It's fucking bananas.
Yeah, no, that is wild. And the rabbit holes, I mean, it almost makes your head explode when you think about what this will actually result in. All right, I got a couple last ones. 2025 will be a better year for Bitcoin than 2024 was.
Yeah, underrated.
And Solana will flip Ethereum's market cap by the end of this cycle. And for context,
overrated.
I think ETH's at like 300, 310, and Solana's 80, 85. Underrated?
Overrated.
Overrated.
Yeah, I think, ETH adoption over time grows massively. ETH has a problem because they've overbuilt block space as they created the layer 2 opportunities. But really, that allows ETH in the future to be used at scale by the financial system and all of this stuff. So I don't really worry about ETH. I know everyone frets about it, but building the excess block space and the upgrades actually create something broader for the future, I think. So if ETH market cap gets to $1 trillion, then Solana won't beat that. So it might beat where ETH is today, but ETH will rise anyway.
Okay. Yep. I can see that. And this last one actually came in from a longtime follower of yours. Underrated or overrated? Raoul will step foot on a golf course before 2030.
Well, there's ways of tricking me into getting onto a golf course, but no. I just look at those clubs; they make me shudder.
Had to keep them in purview.
Friends of mine laugh that the last time I played golf, I just dumped my clubs in a bin and walked off and said, I'm never fucking doing this again.
That was it. Haven't been back since.
It was like, I was never great at golf and I used to play it with mates. And I was on a golf course and there was some old retired Dutch people behind me tutting at me when I was hooking or slicing it, saying, you shouldn't be on the golf course. I'm like, fuck you. Somebody's got to learn somewhere, but golf is like, it's the whole etiquette thing around golf that I just like, I can't do this. And I
hear you. Yeah, there's I've played with some of the most interesting, like greatest people when you get paired up, and then there's certain times you get paired up with people. You got people behind you that are just, I don't know if they're having a bad day or what, or that's just their MO. But it can be frustrating. I get you.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm also shit at golf, so that doesn't help. I'm just not the most coordinated person in the world.
Well, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Maybe I'll be able to change that. Raoul, listen, as always, really appreciate you carving out the time. I think this is, I know, super valuable for me every time we talk. I think it'll be really valuable for the rest of our listeners and our audience. Really quickly before we go, I think a lot of people are already familiar with you, but if they want to hear more from you, want to, get more of your insights, read more of the stuff you put out, what's the best way to find you?
What is coming up in November? I write a service called The Exponentialist with David Mattin. So it's kind of a spin out of some of the stuff I do at GMI, which is all around exponential age technology. I think we're going to be running a free trial for all of October on Real Vision. So if people aren't a Real Vision member, right now you're getting pro macro free trial. So go to realvision.com, just sign up for free. There's a ton of stuff there. There's an amazing community. We've got, an epic event coming up in Miami. But if you're interested in this topic, I write a lot about it, but it's in a service called The Exponentialist, and it's going to be free for a month of November. So I would just go and sign up now and enjoy it when it comes.
Yeah, I can vouch for that too, because I'm an avid reader of just about everything you put out. And it's all very much worth the time and worth the money. So listen, sir, really appreciate you stopping by, taking the time.
Yeah, I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, I love it. All right, my friend.
All right, take care, everybody.